Hi everyone, my name is Maya Fortune with Tribeca New Music. I'm here with Theresa Wong, who is an incredible composer and multi-instrumentalist, and her piece, The Secret of Growth, will be performed on Wednesday, May 13th at 7 p.m. at the Domena Center, performed by the NakedEye Ensemble. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? On your website, you say you're an intermedia artist. What does that mean? How did you get there? And what's been your journey?
Yeah, thank you for asking. My background is that I studied classical music growing up as a child into college, really primarily as a pianist and a cellist as well. And then when I got to college, I was really attracted to the design department where I went to school. And this was at Stanford in California. And I just found the department really exciting and for me, it was a place where I could express my creativity and explore ways of, conceptual thinking, working with materials, making things with my hands. And so I studied design. Eventually I worked in different design jobs that were in 3D design, industrial design, as well as graphic design. So a few years after I graduated, I had received a fellowship in Italy at a center called Fabrica in Treviso in northern Italy. And that was the first time that I came across experimental music, because there was a music department there. And I was also immersed in living in Venice and going to, events of the Venice Biennale, both the art and architecture and the music Biennale. And so that experience for me really was because it opened up my experience and my view to the possibility of being an artist and doing performance work and reuniting my love of music with this creative field of the design world I had been in, but to use it for the purpose of creating art and performance. And I just felt like this was my calling. So that was 2003, 2002, 2003. Actually, it was like 2001 to 3, so over 20 years ago. And when I had kind of had that light bulb moment, I decided, okay, how do I get back into music and kind of cultivate that part of my practice? Because I had stopped playing for about 8 years. So I moved back to the States, and my family was in the Bay Area, and they still are. So I was sort of figuring out what to do, and I decided to enroll at Mills College because there were just fantastic artists there who I really looked up to and was inspired by, and who influenced me in that initial kind of awareness of what music could be. So I studied with people like Fred Frith and Annie Gosfield, and cello with Joan John Renaud, and composition with Alvin Curran, and people who I'm just, still very much in touch with. And since doing a master's there, I've been trying to incorporate all my practices. So from music to design and visual art, and I also worked a lot with the pioneering dancer Anna Halprin before she passed away. So I've been really just in love with the idea of what performance can be, and the practice of shaping the live arts into something that can, potentially be transformative.
Wow, that is so fascinating and amazing, because I think we do get caught up in specific genres of art, music, physical, etc. And so being able to combine all of those is really amazing. One thing I wanted to ask you about in your work is improvisation, and what that journey has been like for you as well, because that is a place where there is room for anything to happen. So what does improv look to you?
Yeah, so I hadn't really had much experience improvising growing up. I had taken some lessons in like jazz piano, but it really was in Italy. I had, a couple really pivotal experiences. I would say one of them was when the vocalist Koichi Makigami, came to do a workshop at Fabrica, and I decided to just kind of participate for fun, and he had everybody improvise with their voices. And I just jumped right in, and I felt, almost like I was flying. Suddenly I felt like I have this voice. I need to use my voice. I had sung in choruses growing up, but I never considered myself a singer, and I was never in any capacity like a soloist in singing. But I felt just this enormous like energy and ability to improvise and to explore all of these amazing like sounds and possibilities that the voice had. And then the other couple experiences was also improvising on the piano during that time, and then hearing performers, like a concert of Hamid Drake and Asif Zahir, drummer and sax player, that's a moment where I just was so moved by the performance, and I could feel everybody in the room so moved, that there was this very clear feeling in me that like, I want to do this. I want to be with people like that. And so since then, improvisation has been a really important part of my practice, not only as a performer and improviser, so to speak, but in my compositional process. A lot of it comes out of just simply improvising and playing instruments. And, when something strikes me that's not according to what I planned, it's very easy for me to just go with that impetus, because I feel like, in the moment, the very present moment that we're in, everything is possible.
That is so cool. So speaking of your compositional process, can you tell me a little bit about the secret of growth and how it came to be?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about NakedEye's performance coming up. When Juping Song, the director of the ensemble, approached me a few years ago to write a piece, we specifically talked about sort of addressing our identities, as Asian women, and particularly kind of bringing in that culture into our music. And my heritage is, my family's from China, so like Hong Kong and Canton, and I believe Juping's family's from Taiwan. So, of course, like within the Chinese culture, there's a vast amount of differences and experiences. But to address that, I decided to tap into sort of like the idea of an ancestral altar. Because I feel particularly sort of out of touch with my own heritage. I was born in upstate New York. I grew up in New York and California. And I grew up speaking Cantonese, but sort of that lived knowledge of being in China is like, it wasn't a part of my experience. I've traveled there, I've performed there. So it was just an opportunity to kind of connect and also provide a reflection, for others, like to see someone of Chinese heritage or Asian heritage sort of reflected visually. So I decided to use like several different offerings that are in the traditional sense of an ancestral altar, like light, like candles. There's food, there's water, flowers, and then the Chinese have a tradition of burning what's called joss paper, and it represents sort of like the physical material wealth of this world. And so in burning it, it's a way of sort of like sending that wealth as a symbol to your ancestors in the afterlife. So that's what I use to structure each movement of the piece. So I don't particularly have a practice of ancestral worship in the traditional sense. So I didn't really grow up with that. I mean, yes, you honor your ancestors, or you go to do what's called baisan, which is visit the graves, but it wasn't like something in our household that we kept. So in a way, it was like my way of approaching this tradition by creating something that was very non-traditional. Kind of also pointing to the fact that, like, I feel a disjunct with my culture. You know, like, my practice now is often sort of at odds with my upbringing and my culture, and there was never really a place for this and like a defined path for what I did or what I do. So in a way, it's a way of connecting those two worlds that are sometimes very difficult to meet.
Yeah, it does seem difficult. I mean, there's some prescription in history or in cultural tradition, very rote. And so bringing a new light to that is very beautiful, but also kind of scary too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm super excited to hear it. So to wrap up, one question that we always ask all of our composers is, what advice would you give to the younger musician who wants to explore, who wants to move past maybe more classical traditional forms and really get into the interdisciplinary action of art? What advice would you give them?
I would say there's this beautiful Rilke poem, and he says, go to the limits of your longing. And it's just like, go to the limits of your imagination. Don't be afraid. You know, don't let the external definitions of things limit you. Don't worry, because our imaginations are so much more expansive than a lot of the structures we see in place in the world for us. And so as an artist, it's our role to make those expansive spaces of our imagination real. So I would say, have that courage to go for it. And that often means, taking small steps, working with your friends, working on small scales, doing one thing after another, but to not compromise your vision, to not be afraid. That's what I would say.
Thank you. I'm scared, but it's...
Well, that's a natural part. I mean, that's just a natural part, like the doubt and the scared feeling it's so part of, our practice.
Yeah.
And, I know Rilke's also, he's been a recent friend. He has a wonderful, text in the Letters to a Young Poet about letting doubt be your friend. Like, often when I feel that doubt, I ask it, okay, what is it trying to tell me?
Right.
What is it what's the message actually that I need to hear? Because it's actually helpful.
Yeah.
It's a sign. Often it's a sign that you're trying something really amazing. It's a sign that you're taking a risk, and it's a sign that you're pushing yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation.
Right. Make that switch.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Anyways, thank you so much for being with me here today on Zoom. And everybody, come to the Wednesday, May 13th show. NakedEye Ensemble will be performing The Secret of Growth. Thank you so much, Theresa.
Thank you so much, Maya. It's a pleasure.